Welcome to Leadership Matters, a podcast from the Bailey Group. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, president of and partner at the Bailey Group, where we believe better leaders create healthier workplace environments, healthier humans, and a better world. On this show, we explore real stories, practical insights, and honest conversations to help you lead yourself and others better. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Leadership Matters. Today I've got the pleasure of sitting down with Kris Fortman, CEO of Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation. Kris, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited for listeners to hear more about you and your journey.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Yes. So I want to help listeners better understand you. What's important for them to know about you, Kris?
Oh, goodness. I think what you see is what you get. I just speak from the heart and always like to have people feel comfortable with me and know that I'm probably more interested in them than anything else.
Where do you think that interest in them comes from? Has that been something that's been innate in you since you were young?
I think so. I always say sometimes people might turn a corner to avoid me because I love a conversation. I love to catch up. I like to hear what is on people's minds or what they have been up to recently. So I think conversation is a gift and such a beautiful way to get to know people. And I think all people are the best teachers. So
that's
it's
really
a rich
great.
environment.
So tell us about what have been the most formative experiences for you in who you are today.
Oh, wow. I always go back to my childhood, as I'm sure a lot of people do. And I had a great childhood. I'm very fortunate. Great parents, great siblings, good friends, fun neighborhood. So I had all of those things. Even though I thought I had it tough at times, I certainly did not. But my dad was a huge role model for me and a figure as a leader and a kind human being who really led by doing the right thing and putting others first. And I try really hard to emulate that as much as I can.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What did your dad do, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so he was a professor of microbiology
Wow.
at the University of Minnesota. I think he was there for 44 years.
Wow.
So I often say I feel like I grew up on the University of Minnesota's campus. But he had a lab, and the people in his lab were like family. There was a high level of trust, a high level of curiosity, a high level of fun, and always constant discovery. And it was such a rich environment. And I don't think I appreciated all of those things I just said to you as a kid who would show up and sometimes be like, how long do I need to be here with you, Dad?
Sure.
But it was really impactful.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
What a neat example to grow up right underneath.
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
So talk about sort of some of your first leadership opportunities. What was your view of what it meant to be a leader before really taking on the responsibility of leading other people?
Well, I think every experience matters, right? And so even as a child, when I would have a birthday party at my house, I took being the host really seriously. I think that's kind of funny. And as I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was organizing and trying to make things work out from a very young age. And so no jokes, but I loved being a cheerleader in high school, right? And I think that level of encouragement when I was a captain, the idea of leading by example, and just knowing what a positive impact people can have on others was really critical in developing. Not surprising, I always wanted to be a professor because I saw my dad do that. So when I was in graduate school, I was a teaching assistant and a research assistant. And I think those early leadership roles and helping others was critical in who I've become as a CEO now.
How so? Say more about that, Kris.
Oh, I think wanting everyone to be their best selves, to be in an environment of constantly learning and having the opportunity to be successful, to provide the right tools, and just to be super clear in my communication and requests and compliments.
To what extent has that been natural to you? So those all sound like really lofty intentions.
Hmm.
How much of that is sort of inborn in who you are, and how much of that have you had to really work at in terms of like direct and clear communication,
God.
for example?
I'm like, is that 50-50, 60-40? It's definitely both. I think that, as I mentioned early on, I just naturally really care about people, and I think it's a gift when you're clear and honest and all of those pieces. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. And so I like to read, I like to examine other leaders. And as I'm sure you're aware, I utilize the Bailey Group a lot and have had coaching for myself and my team members because if you really need to invest in doing it well,
Mm.
I think. Yeah.
Is your work with the Bailey Group the first experience that you've had with coaching? Or, I mean, to me, it seems like you're a very resourceful
Mm,
individual who's really committed to putting in the time and the resources to developing yourself and the people around you.
mm,
Can you talk more about sort of how that's evolved over the course of your
yeah.
career?
Yeah. Well, I think I've been really fortunate. Right out of grad school at HealthPartners, it was during a time where they invested in a lot of training for employees. So I had that opportunity. I'll always give a big shout out to Medtronic. They were really beautiful in the coaching and training that they gave. And I was there 10 years. And I took advantage of every opportunity. They're probably like, Kris, you don't need to sign up for this one, but I always would, and I always took something away. Um, Smartly, when I was hired at the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation, it was through a search agency, and with that came a coach for the first 6 months, and that was really helpful coming in as a new leader and kind of that 30, 60, 90-day plan and, as we say often, kind of creating your brand. Who are you as a leader? And it was really nice to have somebody ask the smart questions that just help guide your path forward. Mhm.
So, who are you as a leader?
Oh
What
my
did you
goodness.
learn in that onboarding coaching experience?
Yeah. So, wow, that's a big question. Maybe we should call my kids. Um, So I will always lead with kindness. I hope that people would describe me as a kind leader, but a kind leader who is serious and motivated, and I really do have high expectations. I want everybody to really enjoy their job and feel successful. And sometimes that means they're not in the right position or they're not at the right place. So I think
Mhm.
it's kind to retain and train and lift up people, and it's also kind to help people find the right path, and that might not be with your organization. And sometimes that sounds unkind, but I think it's one of the most kind acts you can do.
I completely agree.
Mhm.
I think when people are in the wrong role, they can feel it and
Yeah,
the organization can feel it.
absolutely.
And it's I agree with the sentiment. It's the most kind thing you can do to have the difficult conversation to free them up because
Mhm.
there is a right role out there for them somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, that's why so Lee Bailey is my coach. Am I allowed to say that? Is
You are
that like
absolutely.
private information? But sometimes as CEO, you don't always have that place to go for advice or vulnerability, or I think I'm going to have this conversation in the right way, but can we talk through it? And that is just amazingly valuable to
Mm.
have that resource, that safe place, that advice. So it's kind of funny. I don't know if this is a compliment or not, but when I'm in those coaching sessions, I don't necessarily feel like a CEO. It's
Mm.
it's very comfortable and it's in a learning environment, and I just value it.
Mm. What was your perception of what coaching was when, you're part of this search, you accept this role as CEO, and they say part of this is you get a CEO advisor to help you onboard into this role. What was kind of your initial reaction to that and initial perception of what that experience would be like?
Yeah, well, I guess I really wasn't sure because that was my first time at that level of coaching. I thought it was really smart of the foundation to do that. But I was excited, more than anything. And that's just, again, I love to learn. I'm a forever student. And as I mentioned, I really value people. So I thought, well, gosh, I'm going to get all of those things in someone who I believe really wants me to be successful. So it's hard not to feel good about that.
Mm,
Mhm.
that's amazing. What do you think it has done most significantly for you as a leader and for
Mhm.
the organization?
Yeah, well, I think it helps me perform at my best in many ways. I think it's helped me be a better communicator.
Mm,
I think it has also helped me help my team, so my executive leadership team. In our meetings, I take a lot of what I get through coaching
mm,
and cascade that to my team. So it kind of pays it forward in many ways.
mhm.
Mhm.
Wow, that's amazing. Just that I love the word cascade. It's just
Mhm.
such a visual
Mm,
representation of
yeah.
how you're utilizing that. So I want to go back to you accept the role at the Minneapolis Heart
Yeah.
Institute Foundation. How are you feeling? Bring us back to that moment. And then how do you kind of get your footing in a whole new organization?
Yeah. So I was both thrilled and maybe freaking out a little bit, and I think I came from Medtronic, which is a very large organization, a very layered organization. And I think, like most people, I had opinions, right? Like, well, if I were the one making that decision, or I wish they'd look at that. And I was so excited to be in a position of, well, I'm really leading this organization. I am putting the vision out there. I'm fortunate that it has this super solid mission of improving cardiovascular health through innovative research and education. I mean, that's easy to get behind, and it's easy to get behind creating a world without heart and vascular disease. So, very fortunate, and I will say that at HealthPartners, at Medtronic, and at the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation, I've always had a mission to get behind, and I think that's a gift to leaders. So I was grateful for that, but I also knew, and they were very honest with me, that the foundation was in a place that it needed a little turnaround. It needed a leader that was willing to lean in, build relationships, really build the culture, and make it a great place to work while delivering on that mission and while being financially stable and strong. So I knew there was a lot to do, and it was daunting and exciting
Mm.
at the same time.
Mm. What year was this again?
This was, gosh, I should know, 2016.
2016. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're about to celebrate your 10.
Well, you know what? It was 2015, September of 2015. Sorry, I just did have my 10-year
Oh,
anniversary, right?
exception.
I'd have that same problem with my age. I'm like, oh no, it's not that, is it? Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
So how did you practically go about doing that, Kris? You talk about it
Yeah.
was a big demanding role that you were stepping into.
Yeah, yeah. I think I worked really hard to break it into pieces just for my own consumption and to feel like it was doable. Because if you looked at the whole scope of what ideally you wanted to influence and where you wanted to get, it could be overwhelming. Um, and I went right to people first. So, how's the team? How are our physician partners? How is our board of directors? And what are the key areas we need to influence, change, preserve in that? And so, like a lot of people, I did a lot of listening and a lot of learning
Mm.
early on. And sometimes that's hard because I love to have a conversation. But it really was valuable just to really absorb what others were saying, how the dialogue went. Yes.
What were some of the key decisions that you needed to make that really set Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation on a different trajectory?
Yeah, well, I think building out my executive leadership team was key, and bringing others along who had a really logical, positive, but innovative intent. There had to be a spirit of building, and so one of our founders is Dr. Bob Van Tassel, and the practice quotes him all the time. The foundation quotes him all the time, and I'm sure he's like, "Stop." But what he would say to everyone is that you can't think big enough. And that is really the North Star for the practice and why it is so successful, and the foundation. And we always remind ourselves of that. If something feels too big or the solution is out of our reach, we actually have it on a wall in a conference room too. So it's always a good thing to come back to.
I love that.
Yeah.
What else is important ingredients in the culture? I heard you use the word you needed to intentionally shape the culture coming into this role. Um, you can't think big enough. That is a very visceral, I love that statement. What else?
Well, so we value being innovative. We value being agile, and we value one another. So collaboration and mixing up teams, really having interdisciplinary mindset and partnerships is key. So we're always a little surprised where we might find the solution. So, if we ask a data analyst to help us with the data, we probably know what we're going to get there. But maybe I'm going to ask my marketing partner to look at what the data is telling us, obviously after somebody's summarized it a little bit, but it's that we're small enough, with a big enough job, that we're able to do that. And I think that's one of those valuable pieces. Nobody's in a really solid box in their role. We encourage people to work across the organization. Mm-hmm.
That's great and so powerful to get all that synergy by getting the right people in the right rooms and
Yeah.
fostering that collaborative spirit.
And it's always work in progress. I want to say that, I mean, change is constant. And people grow and they take on different roles, and some within the organization, some outside. But I think it's making sure that everybody values change and they see the impact, the positive impact that has, even though it can be challenging at times. Yeah.
That's great. You talked about building out your team was a really important
Yeah.
strategic priority for you. What did you need to let go of or embrace in order to do that, Kris?
Yeah. Well, I think I knew this a long time ago, but the best thing you can do is surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, and complement, your attributes. And so I've always been comfortable with doing that, and I have an amazing team. And I would say that right now, I have an amazing team. Have I made some mistakes along the way? I think early on, and this was a lot of pressure, I was going to make my first big hire. Okay. And I'm like, I gotta get it right. Well, I went and used a search group to help with this, because it was, we are research and we are education, and this was an individual to help us lead research. So very critical. And I made a hire, and with other input, and frankly it was the wrong hire. And that was like crushing to me, and no doubt crushing to the individual that I thought would be in a sweet spot and have great success. And I think one of the difficult things, yet really important things, was realizing that very quickly, and having the difficult conversation and taking the steps to make it right. And I think that really has informed how I hire now, and I think I might have felt a little desperate. So I don't hire in desperation,
Sure.
right? It was just at that time, and I might have been hiring a little more for others than for the team that I needed to build. And so, I think we all become better leaders when we can really look at a mistake or a misstep and learn from it and decide what you're going to do differently. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we've all hired the wrong person or
Mhm.
chose the wrong thing at a certain point. And I appreciate your acknowledgement of I made the best decision I could at the time. And now with hindsight, I recognize some of these different things that I can now incorporate into future hiring decisions, like not being desperate.
Right.
I've been there too. That's so great. You talked earlier about how inspired you were by your father and his vocation of being a professor. It's striking to me that now with the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation, you've got research and
Yeah.
education. Um, where did you grow up thinking professors on your heart?
Yeah.
Talk us through how that
Yeah.
evolved over
Right.
time.
Well, I think you said it earlier in that, a career path is rarely just linear. And I truly did want to be a professor, and I still intended that after I received my PhD and I went into research at HealthPartners, and I loved that, and I just considered that, kind of my postdoc experience before identifying the university that I would teach at,
Wow.
and I fell so deeply in love with research or just the questions and that environment, and I loved the bigger healthcare sector. I mean, if you're just looking at that kind of, drop of water and the ripples, the impact was really meaningful to me, and, so that kind of started it. But I will say it was also difficult because it was all soft money, so grant-funded research.
Mm.
So not only bringing in grants to fund myself or fund team members, and then you were sometimes couldn't enjoy the work you were doing today because you were so focused on applying for the funds that would help the work of the future, right?
Mm.
And so obviously I enjoyed it enough to stay and do that for 8 years. But that is part of the motivation in switching to Medtronic. So, Health Partners Research Foundation, nonprofit research organization, great. And like I said, mainly grant driven. Moved to Medtronic, for profit, big business, but I my original position there was in cardiac rhythm disease management, and so overseeing a portfolio of clinical trials. And I just thought it was so great that I didn't have to write grants to be able to fund my team or
Sure.
do the research. And
Sure.
so, really, that was a fantastic intro to Medtronic. And I speak as if I'm like at core this researcher, and I'm really not. I always say, like, I love to play the piano, but I'm really not a pianist. You have the
Mhm.
people who can hear a song and they can play and it's beautiful. I was one of those people that practiced, an hour or an hour and a half a day, and I could just get enough to do my recital and I felt good. And then if I didn't play it again right away, I'd forget about it. And I have to say, I was a little that way in research where I had to work really, really hard on the analysis and writing the manuscript or writing the grant application. And the sweet spot for me was the team. It was when we had the results and we were presenting it. And I started to understand that more so when I was at Medtronic and managing a team and growing a team and seeing that impact. And then I learned about the Medtronic Foundation while I was in research. And I'm like, ooh, do I have the chance to combine these two worlds? And that was really, I think, a pivot point, if you will, where I'm like, oh, I can take this. science piece and really put it in this philanthropic setting that is going to impact communities across the globe. And that was a really exciting change for me. So 2 years in hardcore kind of clinical trial environment at Medtronic, and then 8 years really looking at global engagement and supporting communities around the globe. So really exciting.
Wow.
Mhm. And I didn't have that plan. So when I was in the 6th grade and it was like, "What do you wanna be when you grow up?" That was not my answer, right? This was not my answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
And it's just a beautiful recognition of honoring kind of the research side and the education side coming together
Yeah.
in your current
Yeah.
role, which is really neat.
Mhm.
So I am struck by your energy and your passion for this work. I had the great privilege and honor of going to the gala that Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation put on earlier this year, and you spoke there so
Mm.
eloquently
Oh,
and so
thank you.
articulately. Um, and even through different interactions with you, I just feel your heart, no
Yeah.
pun intended,
Yeah.
behind the work.
I'll take it. I like that statement.
I'm interested to learn more about where do you think that comes from and how has your experience in this space informed
Mhm.
sort of how you see the world or how you approach your own health or your own family?
Yeah, yeah. So you were at the Hope Health and Heart
Thank
event,
you.
and over the summer, and that's a women's heart cardiovascular health event.
It was
And I
fantastic.
don't mean to do a public service announcement, but it is true.
Please.
Like we're still behind in research about 30 years, we would say, because we weren't part of earlier clinical trials, and we remain underdiagnosed and undertreated. And so do have a lot of passion
Love it.
about that. And it wasn't any ill intent. That was actually, people trying to protect women of, childbearing age,
Mhm.
etc. But it's time to make up for that gap. It's time to educate and it's time to empower. And so I think that's that teacher in me too. I loved being a teaching assistant, as I mentioned, in grad school. And I see these little opportunities to really take the research findings that we have and share them in very digestible ways and actionable ways with people. And we always say so 80% of your cardiovascular risk factors are really under your control. So if I can say, "Hey Kaylee, did you know by eating well, exercising moderately, thinking about sleep, thinking about it, right? I know you have 3 children, so you only get to think about it right now. But talking to your doctor, knowing your family history, all of those things, you can really make the changes in your day-to-day living that will give you a healthier heart. And that's pretty powerful, and it's very doable.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it's empowering
Yeah,
for the humans to kind of get back in the driver's seat for their own health and
absolutely.
wellness.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So, how has that informed kind of your approach to taking care of yourself and taking care of your family?
Oh, yeah. It has. And I think I'm very fortunate that I have a supportive family and we're all active. We're hikers. We spend a lot of time outside. We're a cabin family. So we always, you want to enjoy your work and you want to enjoy what you do to stay healthy. And so I am not, but the boys in my life are all my husband and 3 sons are run marathons. I'm not sure if that's
Oh.
good for them or not. There is actually research you can look up, but
So tell us what the research says.
it's like I think like all things, everything in moderation, right, is good. But we're naturally an active family, so that's good. And if you ask me what I like to do when I have some time, I love cooking. And so we eat a lot of whole and natural foods that taste amazing. And I love it when I see my kids doing the same thing. Not to embarrass my youngest son, but he FaceTimed me last night because he was so excited that he was making himself like these salmon fillets with lemon zest. And I'm like, way to go. You love to see that. And on a personal level, yoga is kind of my central activity and almost mindset. I think it combines that meditative piece and balance and flexibility and flow and community. I'm really fortunate to have a great yoga community that I'm a part of. And I always tease my instructors because they start with an intention, and I don't tease them, but I'm like, "Ooh, I'm waiting for it," because it always is grounding for the day,
Sure.
and I think I bring that to work with me, and I bring it to my family then, and it's a great way to center.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's incredible. You have a very full life, and I'm just appreciating how much intentionality you put behind kind of everything you do, both
Mhm.
at work and outside of work, and with your relationships. Um, how do you? This is gonna sound like a really bizarre question, but how do you do it all, Kris? Practically speaking, and don't give us time management tips.
Yeah, no, I won't.
No,
Oh my
what's
goodness.
the mindset you embrace, or how do you manage everything?
Yeah, well, and I don't always. So thank you, and I think we're always working on ways to get it all in while yet not totally stressing yourself out. And I think one of the big things is really loving your job or appreciating your job to the point where it doesn't feel like work. And then you have this better balance in your personal life then. Now my family would say, "Ooh, don't give her that much credit because we'd like her home more often in the evenings or that she would have been at this sporting event." But, so I think it takes some juggling and partnership and I think making sure your kids know that you're always going to do your best to be there, but for the times that you can't, that you wish you were, and you were going to see a picture, you're going to hear the story about it. My family joked a lot when I was at Medtronic and I had a global position. I missed a lot of key things. So I don't really have any crazy regrets, but I think there are just those seasons in your life where you can be a little more intentional in certain areas, and I think then just making sure that everybody's on the same page, and you're telling people that you care, and it tends to work out.
Yeah.
But I am not a good time management person, but let's edit that out and say I am.
I just remember you talking about on your drive into work, you're talking to your mother-in-law and like managing relationships.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, it is. I think I almost miss those times when maybe you couldn't get everything done on your drive and you had that quiet time, but
Yeah.
because now you do take care of a lot of business while you're driving, or you're listening to whatever book you might have, or podcast. Hey,
Consuming
um,
content.
but it's like that's why I think something like yoga or running or wherever that is where you're not constantly kind of taking on information or having to process, but you can just be.
Mm,
Hmm.
yeah. Rarer and rarer these
Yeah,
days.
yeah, it is.
So we've talked about no leadership journey is linear.
Mm-hmm.
Bring us back to a time in your life, Kris, when you were going through it. It was a hard season, a challenging season, and you didn't know what would come of it.
Mm. Wow, there's so many to choose from. And I did share one. I think it was really difficult when I first started at the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation. And the culture was broken and it was clear. And I don't think that I was really necessarily wanted by the majority of employees. I don't know majority, but certainly a group. And that's really hard. So my weakness, I know this, is I like people to like me, and so then I'm like, oh, these people don't like me. This is terrible. What did I do? Yeah. And so, I really came from something I loved doing and I was excited for this challenge. And so I did pause for a minute and I'm like, what in the world did I just do? And that didn't last that long. As soon as you start to make a little progress or you have somebody in your court who believes in you and, just each little piece, my passion for the work and the people and the mission just grew and grew, but it was not an easy start by any means.
Mm.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to yourself in that period, knowing what you know now?
Mm. Well, definitely have a little more confidence. I think that um, even though I'm not that old, but my parents uh, were born in the 30s, right? I think they raised us in a very traditional way of and good things like respect, be careful what you say, those things. And I maybe had a little too much of that when I started. I'm like, "Ooh, I'm surrounded by all of these physicians who clearly know so much more than me." And then I'm surrounded by all of these employees who have such a longer tenure than I do. Clearly they know more than I do. And I wish I would have sooner valued my fresh perspective, my experience, and given myself a little more credit as an early leader. And so I wish I could tell myself just to walk in that room with a little more confidence.
Yeah.
hmm
What do you think that would have done for you?
I think it would have sped up the trajectory a little bit
Sure.
and um of positive impact and maybe just had a few less nights of questioning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I mean, we do the best we can with the
Mhm.
information we have available at the time. And yet, when you know more, you can do more.
Absolutely.
Mm. Looking back on your leadership journey, who have been the leaders that have most inspired you? And how would you characterize those leaders?
Oh, goodness, that's great. So I always go back to St. Ben's where I went to undergraduate school. And I think that was my first experience of really appreciating um, other female leaders. So the nuns were amazing. And, I was a resident assistant. I really loved doing that when I was a sophomore. If you talk about early leadership experiences, I don't know if the girls on my floor would agree, but I really loved it. And I was paired with a sister, on the floor. And I learned so much from her. Her name was Sister Janelle. And to this day, not only did she help me grow as an RA and a leader and a kind leader, while also being tough, right? There were a lot of rules. I was an all girls campus, let me tell you. I had to enforce those rules. But then she also would invite me to go canoeing, right? And we would have really good discussion on not only our own growth, but how do we help these young women grow?
Mm.
And so super powerful, super, it's influenced me my whole life. And I always get a little almost teary eyed when I talk about it. There you go.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Sister Janelle
Yeah. Yeah.
taught you how to canoe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also the importance of kindness and
Mhm.
relationships while holding accountability,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think
Absolutely.
is a hallmark of
Mhm.
really good, effective leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
That space for both.
hmm So I would say Sister Janelle. And then when I was fortunate enough to have my first job out of graduate school, Dr. Sherry Rolnick was my boss at HealthPartners. And she was just this beautiful, like, stick of dynamite. She got things done, and she was tiny, right? And she and her husband were, like, ballroom dancers, yet she was this, like, really hardcore scientist, PhD, MPH, well-published, just great, great individual. And I learned a lot from her style and her humor and her ability to care and lift up others. And frankly, she was one of the people who kind of said, Kris, on the science side, on the people side, on the management side, on the vision side, really strong, and that's not always easy to hear, and I thank her to this day for always being honest and encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to that feedback? Was it surprising? I mean, I heard you
Yeah, a little bit. I might have like had to swallow a lump in my throat. I was still pretty young and maybe went home and talked it over with my husband, right? Like, do I need to get a different job? But it really allowed me just to think a little differently, and it's kind of getting back to that piano metaphor of, okay, what is the instrument for me, and I really think it was motivating individuals, helping people learn, and moving together in alignment and innovation and energy. Yeah.
and how powerful to hear what others see in you reflected back.
Mm. Yeah.
Because people leadership is big. I mean, the relationships, the people, that is at the core of a lot of what the world really needs.
Yeah.
And what a gift. To be clear, you could work for an hour and a half, 2 hours at this piano piece that might come to somebody else in
Yeah.
15 minutes.
Right.
And likewise, that person could work for hours and hours and hours on the people side with something you could accomplish in much shorter time.
Yeah. Yeah. Always practicing. I want to make that clear, but I think that Sister Janelle, Dr. Sherry Rolnick, really influential. My first boss, I look at all these like crazy ladies, so as we go on from Sister Janelle to Sherry Rolnick, and then I give all this credit to Julie Pfeiffer, who was the woman who decided to hire me at Medtronic. And I think that's so critical. um, I don't care who you are, if you're a man or a woman, or, I think lifting each other up is critical, but oftentimes we can be in positions where it is so important for women to lift up women. And I've been really fortunate to have that. And every now and then you have the other side of the coin. Graduate school wasn't easy. And sometimes you'd have like, I called them the angry professors, right? Well, nobody helped me. I'm not going to help you. It wasn't easy for me, so it's not going to be easy for you. And I thought, that is messed up,
Yeah.
right? And so those you always learn too about what are the things you will not do
Yeah.
as a leader, and I will not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Equally as impactful.
Yeah.
What will you not do?
Mhm.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Kris, talk to us about your role as CEO at Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation. You've been in the role for a decade now. How do you view the role, and what is the organization most critically relying on you?
Oh, goodness. Okay. So I still have to pinch myself. And I do say this, and I probably said it when you were at Hope Health and Heart event on stage, but I truly believe that I have the best job, or at least I have the best job for me. And at this point, I hope I'm the best leader for the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation. And I think the organization relies on me to show up. I say that a lot. I mean, one of the most important things we can do for one another is to show up. And even if you don't have the answers, even if you're not having the best day, it is something that is typically in your control. So I think they depend on me to show up at minimum, and then really hold the mission close for all. That'll always be my question. There are a lot of different areas that we could go for a cardiovascular organization, and different areas we could have impact in. And we always our North Star is our mission. So is this mission aligned? Does it move our mission forward? And what is so exciting with advances and technology and training and learning, how we deliver on our mission is so very different today than it was for me 10 years ago, that it was 44 years ago when the foundation started. And that's what's so exciting. And I think it's why every day feels so new. When you just said it to me, Kaylee, oh, now that you've been there 10 years, I'm like, what? Do your math over. I've been there maybe 1 or 2. And it feels that way because it really is new every day. And our opportunity to improve care, to improve health, to offer hope. I mean, that's so thrilling. So I think, on a soft note, the organization and the board of directors and our partners rely on me to, I think, always have that passion for our mission and to share it with our employees and our supporters
Yeah.
so that always lives on and then far beyond me, putting things in place that will continue.
Mm. And inspire and align the organization behind that
Yeah,
exciting
absolutely.
mission. You talked earlier about you've enjoyed setting the vision for the organization. And I love how you talked about that how being really exciting as that evolves over time.
Mhm.
Um, what would you like to share with us about this vision that you're in the process
Oh,
of casting?
yeah. Well, I just want everybody to feel really proud about living in Minnesota, in being in the Twin Cities, which is often, termed Medical Alley. So through the university, through the Minneapolis Heart Institute, through our med tech partners, I mean, we are a hotbed of innovation. It is really an exciting place to work in this field. And we're fortunate. You can talk about all the economic hardship around healthcare right now, but we have fantastic healthcare. So, and how do we continue to make that better through research, through education? And so the vision, again, I share the vision of the organization, which is a world without heart and vascular disease. But the really important question is the how. How do we get there? And frankly, I can't take much credit on having this solo vision. It's the physicians did day in and day out kind of pushing for that next answer. How are we going to answer this question? I don't want to see a patient going through this. I think we could do this differently or better. So we strive to be a global hub of cardiovascular innovation, right? And so what does that mean? It really means leveraging that research arm, leveraging that education arm, which gives tools to our physician and hope to our patients. And that is a great reason to get up every day.
Absolutely. Are there reasons better than that?
Yeah.
I love your comment on how it's the best, you've got the best job for you. I just think that's so evident as you sit here and speak to us today.
Thank you.
You've talked before about the priority around building out this team. I know I kind of keep going back here, but I also recognize I heard you say it's not just me. This is kind of a co-created vision for how we're getting there, and it requires a lot of time and energy and effort outside of you. How has the cohesion of your leadership team evolved over time?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we get better and better over time as we grow in trust and comfort in challenging one another. And I think we have a really good role model in our board of directors. We're really fortunate to have a strong board of directors, and our chair. Tom Gunderson has been just such a supporter of us growing as a team and of making sure we have the best board of directors in place for this mission and for this work. So we're really fortunate to have a healthy relationship between the board and the executive leadership team that I think serve almost as role models for one another. Um, but I will say it takes work, right? It doesn't like you just show up and you have the best team, right? We all work at it, and sometimes we need help. And as we mentioned earlier, we've worked really closely with the Bailey Group. I've done some offsites at Bailey, and it's been really powerful to bring my executive leadership team together. We have all done the Hogan assessment, and so it really gives us insight into ourselves, but into one another. And one of the most fun things that Lee Bailey kind of walked us through is like, if all 7 of you were one person, here's your profile. And it was eye-opening and neat to look at. And so I think having more information on who I am and who my team members are has really helped us grow and come together faster and probably in an even more healthy way than we would have if we didn't have the opportunity for that kind of coaching, support, and information.
I've personally experienced the power of this enhanced awareness around how I'm wired and how I might approach things or the lens through which I see the world. Practically speaking, Kris, how have you leveraged those insights to either interact differently as a team or show up differently as a leader?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we just talk about it, right? And we'll say, we did an exercise where people were lining up depending on how they scored on a scale, right? And it is really helpful for one another to see that, to say, oh, that's why maybe we don't agree when we're trying to work this budget question out, or we're trying to think of how to prioritize our next investment. And I think once we understand why we're probably coming at it from different angles, you can appreciate it even more. It's not that somebody's just choosing to disagree with you. They honestly are bringing different things and interpretation to the table that in the end we likely make a much better decision and take a smarter step forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is just so empowering when you can better understand where other people are coming from and the intention behind it.
Absolutely.
So I want to wrap us up here,
Okay.
Kris.
All right.
What feels important for you to share before we conclude?
Oh, well, I would say that, coaching matters and that it's a gift, and that I'm really pleased that my team also sees it as a gift and an investment in one another. It's not because you're not doing something well enough, or it is really a message that I believe in you. I value you, and I will likely learn so much from you. So let's do this together, and let's talk about it and reap the benefits.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I promise we didn't care to say any of that. Why are you such a believer in the world of coaching? I've seen the industry go from people wouldn't even talk about coaching probably 10 years ago. Oh, I don't want people to know. I used to send emails to personal emails. They didn't even want anything related to you're working with a coach going to their email, or they'd only meet after hours or on the weekend because they just didn't want their team to be aware of it at all.
Wow.
To now,
That memo. Okay.
and it wasn't everyone. It really was not. But now it almost has been really embraced as a really powerful tool to maximize effectiveness from a leadership standpoint.
Well, I think that I've always valued education so deeply, kind of going back to my dad and then those important people in my life. And so education and teaching have just been these cornerstones, and I think how I'm wired. So it's never been something that I think one should be embarrassed about, but should be excited and privileged and interested in. So I think that's probably a core piece of my perspective. We should all be lifelong students, and I think we are all a work in progress. My dad, who's 95, would say that. Still learning.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for joining us today. I've really appreciated learning more about you and your background and your heart. So thank you for sharing it all with us.
It has been a great conversation, Kaylee. Thank you.
Yes. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on Leadership Matters. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Leadership Matters.
If today's episode resonated with you, would you do me a favor and share it with someone you care about? To learn more about the work the Bailey Group is doing in the world, check us out at thebaileygroup.com or follow us over on LinkedIn. We love sharing useful articles, helpful resources, and valuable tools to help you expand your leadership capacity. Like and subscribe, and join us next time for more honest conversations.